Howdy, it's tubalcain again, and in this video I want to talk about the headstock of the South Bend 9-inch lathe. Now in the last video I showed you how to take it off. In fact, I did take it off, and it's only just setting on the bed right now. And remember, it's held on with these two clamps that are underneath the bed with two bolts. That's all that holds that on. And now it's ready to take off, and all of the massive chips, of course, were removed in the last video. So I'm just going to lift it straight up off of the ways, off the bed, and that's all there is to it, and it probably weighs 30 pounds. There were at least two kinds of headstocks for this 9-inch that I know of. This, of course, has the cone pulleys on it for a flat belt drive. But if you have one of the underdrive where the motor is below, it may be equipped with V pulleys and a V belt. So there would be a difference. Remember that these headstocks are plain bearing. They're a precision brass or bronze bearing. There are no ball bearings or there are no roller bearings in this unit. So mainly what I intend to do here is to not strip it down, but to just clean it real well. Remember, there is a broken gear on the back gears, and notice that these back gears are truly on the back. That's where they get the name back gears, but on some lathes such as a Logan or a South Bend, or I should say Atlas, at least some Atlases, the so-called back gears are below, so I guess we should call them below gears. So they're just in a different position, but they're serving the same purpose. I suppose this is a repetition, but it's a good time to look at some of these parts. By the way, this is a thrust bearing right in here. That is a type of ball bearing. But here's a good chance to look how these are constructed. Now, when the bull pin right here is in, that locks this gear here to the spindle. So in other words, this is all turning at once, and the back gears are not in use. They're just back there out of the way idling. But when I pull the bull pin, and usually there's a guard here so you can't see all of this, but when you pull the bull pin like this, you are just unlocking this big gear from the spindle. Now it's moving a little bit because of friction, but you can see that the pulley here is turning freely. And normally when we have the bull pin out, we put the back gears in. They have to mesh. And let's see. Now when the pulley turns here, you can see the speed is slowed way down because the gear train now is through here, through this shaft, this gear turning, and then turning the other gear here, slowing it way down and increasing the power. And if the bull pin is still in place, it locks the spindle, and that may be what caused this gear tooth to break, which you see right there. This is probably a good time to talk about how to oil the headstock, and you can see someone has painted this oil hole red and this one red, and that just takes a couple of drops of oil, and that's just to allow this shaft to turn. And remember that you have two oilers here. This is really important. You take this screw out and put a couple drops of oil in there, and you take this screw out. And this is pretty much true for all brands of lathe, that there's a set screw, but it might be hidden by the belt. So make sure you check to see that you have lubricated it. Take that little screw out of there and a couple of drops of oil, and that lubricates such that the pulleys can spin on the shaft when the bull pin is not engaged. And the two most important oilers are right here. They're Gitz right angle oilers, and use spindle oil in that because, and that's below the bearings, as you can see. But the reason that it's below is that there's a system of wicks in there that draws the oil up into contact with the bearing. So looking at it from here, You can see that here's the oiler, and it goes, the hole is drilled into here, and again there's wicks that hold the oil. But you need to oil that daily. And then always a couple drops of oil or a dab of grease on the gears. And of course this is the gear that meshes with the gears in the gear train that goes down to the quick change gearbox. And on the 9-inch lathe, I believe all of them are made with a 1.5 inch 8 thread, and that is a number 3 Morse taper. Unfortunately, on a 9-inch lathe, as I've said many times, we've got a relatively small spindle hole there, so the maximum size of work that you can run through the chuck and through the spindle is about 7/8. And with the headstock turned upside down, you can see that there's one V groove here that goes into the ways, onto the ways. There's the 2 mounting holes that I talked about earlier. And these surfaces are scraped. They've been ground and scraped. And the scraping is still visible other than the dirt and the mess on there. And you'll see that after I clean it up. But what I intend to do now is to spend an hour or more off camera cleaning, brushing, and whatever I can do to get this clean enough to reinstall. And I'm pretending that I want it clean enough to paint, but you know, I'm not going to paint it. But I don't know if this has probably ever been off the machine, so I'm going to clean it good. Really, the chips underneath here do not matter, and those will accumulate very quickly, but you can see that there's just an awful lot of grime everywhere. So I'll see you in an hour or more. I do not intend to take the headstock apart, but this is the parts list, the genuine South Bend, and you can see there's a lot of parts there, and you want to avoid taking the spindle out unless absolutely necessary. I'm just going to clean this up real well. But looking down at the bottom here, you can see that the lathe was available with both flat belt and V-belt drives. Should you need to change the V-belt, the spindle has to come out. But my recommendation is that you buy a linked belt that you can insert without taking the spindle out. Remember, these are not ball bearings, they are a sleeve type of precision brass bearing. And this is the parts list for the underdrive headstock, meaning the lathe that is equipped with a motor below rather than behind. And there are some minor changes, I suppose. I haven't really studied this because I have the back drive type, not this one. But the bearings would be the same. I'm back, and I spent over 90 minutes cleaning this up with a brush and a rag and solvent, and I was very careful not to get any solvent into the bearing holes here, or the oilers into the bearings. And I reattached the Gitz oilers, and this is Spindle Oil number A, which I did buy over eBay, and it's designed for the South Bend lathe, the right viscosity and all of that. And I may show that in another video. South Bend called for really 3 different oils, but no telling what it's been oiled with over the years. You know, I'm sure it wasn't strictly spindle oil, but probably whatever, cutting oil or whatever they had there. So it cleaned up pretty well, and you might think, well, it doesn't look any better than when you started. It's because it hasn't been painted, but it really is a lot cleaner, but far from perfect, and there's still a little corrosion here on the pulleys, but I don't care because that will clean up eventually with the leather belt. And that's about as good as it gets. And I'm reasonably happy. And the only major issue with this is the missing gear tooth, actually. Now it may function in back ears semi-well with the missing tooth. We'll see, because I'm going to try to use it. However, under a great deal of torque or stress or whatever it would be, maybe it would clunk or even strip the next gear. I really don't know. Time will tell. I would hate to damage the larger gear though. Now looking at this end, right here, if you have end play in your spindle, that is this way, there is a collar here, and that collar is threaded. You can see a little bit of the end of the thread before it goes into a gear there on the spindle. But bringing this around, you can see that the collar is split and there is a screw. It's I think a Philister head, so take a straight screwdriver. You would loosen that up and you can screw this in or out, and it's a fine thread, so just a little bit of a turn will take up any play. And I'm going to, while I'm at it here, oil this thrust bearing in case any solvents got in there. But I did not put this in the solvent tank. And then I'll use regular oil there and a few other places, and I'm not going to show that. I said there, and there, but that won't be spindle oil. I'll have to look on the chart. Well, that concludes this video on the headstock. I hope that helped you a little bit. Now in the next video, I am going to reassemble the entire lathe. That is, put the headstock and the tailstock and the carriage and the quick change gearbox and the lead screw and all of that back onto the lathe, and that will complete it. So this whole series of videos here, 6 videos I think it is. Be sure and watch all of them if you're working on a South Bend lathe. You might find it of interest or helpful. But a lot of this information can also be found in the South Bend How to Run a Lathe book. So be sure and get yourself a copy of that. Well, that concludes this video. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.